we're going to get into how we're tackling some of this in the wrong way in a bit. But tell me, why is it dangerous to believe in this gender spectrum?
Why is it dangerous? I'm trying to imagine a world where it wouldn't be dangerous. I think, as some feminists use it and some people use it, perhaps it's not dangerous in the sense that, if all you mean by gender is the expression of your sexed body, in other words, like if you want to be more masculine as a woman or more feminine as a man, if that's what people mean by gender, then I think it's fine. I think it's a little too confusing. It's hard to pin down, but the reality is because people conflate sex and gender, then a whole host of problems follow from that. So, men can just say that they were born in the wrong body. And often we see now they don't even need to get surgeries to say that they're trans. They don't even need to get, take hormones or any of those things to say, well, no, I'm actually a woman, like Leah Thomas, or I think it was William Thomas before the transition, but not much of a transition, still a fully intact male, which you can see in the swimsuit pictures. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's, and then, of course, he entered into the female swimmers' spaces, took showers with them, fully nude, and none of them actually even knew that a male, was going to be joining them, and so they were all, shocked by it, and they were told that they needed to seek therapy if they were uncomfortable with this, rather than the people addressing this and say, "Oh yeah, we'll just remove him from your team or give him a separate locker room or whatever." No, they said, "Well, you all just need therapy to deal with this." I mean, it's so. And then, of course, the worst part about all of this is that if you believe in gender as this almost like spiritual construct, this soul that can be in the wrong body, then of course, if adults need to transition, then why wouldn't children need to transition? I mean, the argument is you're just prolonging their anguish and their suffering if you don't give them the puberty blockers so that they can pass as their true sex. And if I'm sure you've talked to others about this, but giving kids puberty blockers and hormones will often make them sterile. I mean, for the rest of their life, it'll ruin their sexual function. And it's hard to imagine that too many of these people are too satisfied with their outcomes. And it's difficult to get that data, but we know more and more that a bigger and bigger percentage of people are detransitioning. So
it's true. Like if you believe in the ideology, if this is something you really believe in, and again, this is something we have with religion sometimes, it's like if you really believe in the Bible and that, then you should be stoning gay people. If you believe this, if this is your book and you're going to go by, I think you should be doing it. And I'd almost respect them more if they did that. People are going to take that out of context. I don't want people to do that. And if you believe in the ideology, gender ideology, then kids should be doing that, because they're going to look much better, they're going to pass better,
right?
They're not going to get the Adam's apple. It does tend to be men into women, doesn't it? Not going to get the Adam's apple. I was by the time I was 14, I was like 6'2" already. Adam's apple, all that stuff. I would have a much better life if I wanted to be, if I could be a woman or whatever, had I done so beforehand.
Right.
That's the dangerous thing here, is that it's happening to kids. And like, what do you know as a kid?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are reasons, obviously, that, we outlaw tattoos until a certain age, or drinking, or joining the military, or being able to rent a car. I mean, there's a number of things that we don't allow kids to do for a good reason. But then when it comes to this issue, so many people just jump on board. And I think a lot of times they do it because they think that they want to be on what they say is the right side of history. So they were perhaps on the wrong side of history, or a number of people were on the wrong side of history about the gay issue, or, going further back about, black people not being able to vote, et cetera. So they want to be ahead of the curve, and they want to be ultra progressive. So they think, well, if there are gay kids, there must be trans kids. So of course we need to give them all these, surgeries and hormones. And of course people will deny that this stuff is happening. They'll deny that children are getting double mastectomies, even though we have the data. And then as soon as they find out that it's true, they immediately switch and say, it's strange because they're kind of aghast by this, right? They're horrified that this can't be happening. And then as soon as they see evidence that it is happening, they say, oh, well, I mean, it must be a good thing. Clearly.
Right. Yeah, they have to square it with themselves.
Yeah.
Man, and what got you initially interested in this topic? Why is this what work were you doing that led you into this?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons that I'm interested. The initial one being that I grew up with fundamentalist Christians, and I kind of agree with you that I respect them a little bit more in the sense that they're trying to be as literal as possible with their interpretation of the Bible. Obviously, anyone can have any interpretation of it, but from my own reading, I've studied the Bible quite a lot. I mean, it does talk about stoning gays, for instance, and even in the New Testament, it's very anti-gay. People say, "Oh, it's only in the Old Testament." That's not true. I grew up with that. I believed it very strongly. I myself was a fundamentalist, super conservative Christian living out in the middle of nowhere. And it was very kind of cult-like. It was very dogmatic. If you disagree with this, you're going to hell. It was psychologically very challenging. Eventually, I saw the kind of moral problems with that worldview, and I left it behind and moved to Seattle, Washington, and then Portland, Oregon, two very, very progressive places. And I thought, oh, these are my people. These are liberals. I'll fit in here. And then I slowly started to realize, probably in like 2010, 2011, and then especially when Trump got elected, that wow, there's a lot of the same kind of dichotomous thinking here, where anyone who's a Republican is a bigot and a white supremacist. They wouldn't tell you that you're going to hell. They'll just tell you that you're not fit for society. And so that struck me as pretty bizarre. And then I met Peter Boghossian, became friends with him, and he started talking about intersectionality being a religion, and that clicked for me. That made a lot of sense. And so I was looking at his work and James Lindsay and Helen Pluck-Rose and reading a lot about that. And so I thought, wow, this is so akin to what I grew up with. It's just kind of a repackaging. So this is almost like a new religion, not just intersectionality, but these identity politics, this identity politics ideology, or what's called critical social justice, or I just call woke ideology because it's easier. So I started to make a series on this idea that there's this new kind of unorganized cultish religion that's popping up and is placing, heavy emphasis on your immutable characteristics and saying that that's all that you are. And there are these oppressor versus oppressed classes. And if you're a white heterosexual male, you're evil. And if you're, black trans lesbian, you have some kind of elevated status. And so, I made a whole series about that. And I was just going to do another episode on the topic of gender because it kind of fits into that identity politics category. But then when I started to scratch the surface of it, I realized that it was a really complex topic and there was so much to it. And I had an opportunity to interview so many people about it. So I separated the series and turned it into its own thing.
Interesting. Yeah. And your work is great as well. And what's the name of your channel?
The Signal Productions.
Okay, and you've got some great series there.
Yeah.
I mean, people ask me as well, why gender? And it's, are you obsessed with gender? I feel like I agree with everything you've said. I used to do a lot on cults and things, and this seems to me like a cult. And I think gender is the place where it is just the most obviously insane.
Yeah.
Like if you need the one place where there's the 2 + 2 = 5, the Orwellian thing of like you've got to say this to adhere to the party, even though to show the litmus test of how ideologically captured you are, the UN, and how pervasive this is as well in mainstream institutions, the UN tweeting trans lesbians are lesbians and things like that. That is like the moment where you're like, okay, this is the litmus test. If you can see that and you go, if you're going, yes, I will also say this, you've been captured.
Right.
And what you said before also was really interesting, that it's something I noticed as well. I obviously met over the years a lot of people who left cults, interviewing them. Time after time, they've became super woke, like really.
Yeah,
woke.
interesting.
Yeah. I think it's, if you come from somewhere where there's a lot of homophobia, gay people are bad, these people are bad, whatever, it's natural to go, I'm going to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
I suppose like eventually the thing to learn is that humans do that. We're all religious. We're all tribal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely, would be pre the term woke in public consciousness. But, when I left the kind of religious right, I was very interested in anarchy and far left, kind of anarchistic idealism. But that quickly fell apart for me. It didn't really make much sense. I joined some anarchistic groups, but there was always a leader. And I was like, well, that's odd. And then having seen firsthand the manifestation of some of this ideology in Portland, I started to distance myself from it and realize that this is just, it's based on faulty premises, and two, it's just really unhealthy. And it really is that same kind of, I think these people have the same kind of religious architecture in their brain that says, on my side, good, not on my side, bad. And therefore, they engage in just this horrible behavior. And a lot of those people ended up being in Antifa and, kind of the militant part of the left wing. So I'm glad I left that behind and didn't get fully indoctrinated into that.
Yeah, it's amazing the confidence a lot of these people have, especially those who have left former cults that they often joined, weren't even born into. They join a cult, then they join another one, and they're just as sure the next time.
Yeah.
I've had so many people, again, former interviewees, who have seen some of the work I've been doing recently and have left public comments, just, Andrew, you've disappointed me so much. I thought you were better than this. That's such a horrible phrasing. Like, I thought you were better than this, because it implies that the person saying it is the person who is better. And they have an understanding, a moral arbiter here of this is what better is, and you haven't aspired to it. What a horrible thing.
That's very demeaning and ridiculous. And I think that this idea of like people bouncing from one cult to another leads me to really one of the main things I'm interested in, which is talking about meaning, which I touch on in the first episode of my series on gender, because I think that's really like an underlying problem in so much of this stuff. I think it's largely, or at least partly, why people grab onto these ideologies and become so dogmatic, so stringent, and so nasty, as you mentioned, because it gives them a sense of purpose. It places them in a particular position that is kind of above everyone else, right? And again, it gives them a sense of meaning. And I think there is a crisis of meaning, especially with and I'm not religious, but there's been clearly a decline of traditional religion. And then you see all these new woke religions pop up, and it gives people, like I said, a sense of purpose and meaning. And I think that's part of why people act so insane about a lot of this stuff, or with a lot of this stuff, because it's their sense of identity. It's something beyond this simple material world in a way.